Welcome to the lecture, Adrenal Fatigue Solutions. I'm Dr. Teresa Rispoli, PhD, Doctor of Clinical Nutrition, licensed acupuncturist, and founder of Functional Nutritionist Academy, where I teach an online certification course called Mastering Functional Nutrition. I'm also the founder of Complete Health Institute, a wellness center located in Agoura, California, where I've been in clinical practice for over 27 years, and I'm your host today. Welcome. So just to give you a heads up, if you want more information on adrenal fatigue than I give you in this short lecture, I go over adrenal fatigue extensively in Lesson 5 and 6 of my Mastering Functional Nutrition course at functionalnutritionistacademy.com. It's probably the most extensive course on adrenal fatigue out there. So let's get started. The term adrenal fatigue was formulated in 1998 by naturopathic Dr. James Wilson, PhD. This syndrome was explained as a collection of related symptoms caused by insufficient adrenal gland function. In other words, when the adrenal glands operate inadequately, complications arise and adrenal fatigue syndrome can develop. Usually, the onset of adrenal fatigue is attributed to prolonged stress and chronic infections due to hormonal changes, immune response, and metabolic changes. Those suffering may not present any physical signs of illness, but will still feel generally fatigued, have trouble cognitively, and experience strong food cravings. Sleep does not solve this exhaustion. So it's common to see an increase in the intake of coffee, sugar, and other stimulants to sustain energy throughout the day. Unfortunately, this is counterproductive for the adrenals. We'll be going over more detail on how these habits affect this complicated phenomenon throughout this presentation. But first, what do the adrenals even do? The adrenal glands are two glands located above the kidneys in your back area, and are made of two different parts. Both are responsible for hormone production, but differ greatly. The adrenal cortex produces hormones such as cortisol and aldosterone that are essential for life. Cortisol works to regulate our metabolism, immunity, and stress response, while aldosterone helps control blood pressure and proper cardiovascular function. The adrenal medulla produces non-essential hormones, or ones that are not vital for life. This does not mean that this component of the adrenal is not important. In fact, the adrenal medulla is incredibly valuable for dealing with physical and emotional stress and contributes to our fight or flight response of our sympathetic nervous system. The most notable chemical messenger produced in this part of the adrenals is adrenaline. The adrenal glands also produce the sex hormone estrogen and progesterone, as well as various neurotransmitters such as dopamine. When the proper production of these hormones are disrupted, adrenal fatigue can develop. Because of the multitude of responsibilities these little glands have, adrenal fatigue can manifest very differently depending on the individual. Some signs of adrenal insufficiency and fatigue include persistent and nonspecific fatigue, struggle waking up in the morning, so fatigue upon wakening, you don't feel rested, imbalanced energy levels throughout the day, difficulty handling stress, food cravings, particularly salt, weakened immunity, unexplained body aches and joint pain, depression and anxiety, dark circles under the eyes, impaired recovery after physical activity, low blood pressure, poor circulation and numbness, lightheadedness or dizziness, weight gain and fluid retention, and decreased libido. Do you suffer any of these symptoms? Well, contrary to popular belief, stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline are a good thing when released appropriately. They provide mental clarity, physical strength, and overall brain and muscle efficiency that can be seen even as superhuman. Have you ever heard of the term adrenaline rush? Well, this term refers to your body appropriately responding to stress by activating its fight or flight mechanism. It can be used to propel you out of danger in a pressing situation or conquer a fearful situation. However, when our body unloads adrenaline, when we're not in a task situation, such as just sitting at a desk or working on a computer, then our body's not using that stress hormone correctly. So on the other hand, chronic stress suppresses adrenal function. As the adrenal glands become unable to continue producing the cortisol needed to recover from stress, stress can be caused by a number of things, such as unresolved biomedical dysfunctions like infections, hormone imbalances, things like that, nutrient-poor diet, lack of sleep, stimulants such as coffee and sugar, a work-life imbalance, overtraining physically, and emotional trauma. The body's response to stress includes a surge of cortisol, a boost of energy, an increase in blood sugar, lagged immune function, and the breakdown of stored protein and carbohydrates. As you can tell, this is not ideal when not in immediate danger, as it leaves us to complications like insulin resistance, decreased immunity, muscle wasting, and thyroid complications. Now, the rise and inevitable drop of stress hormones impacts the thyroid by slowing thyroid production and the conversion of thyroid hormones to their active and usable forms. If the thyroid does not operate properly, many of the common symptoms of adrenal fatigue are present, such as fatigue, depression, weight gain, muscle aches, brain fog, and low libido. Unfortunately, due to the similarities in symptoms of both hypothyroidism and adrenal fatigue, the two conditions can be easily confused. These glands work together due to their collective roles in supplying essential hormones throughout the body. In fact, it's not uncommon for those suffering with thyroid dysfunction to also have weakened adrenals. And thyroid deficiency is common today. Over 80% goes undetected by many standard thyroid tests. Most endocrinologists only test TSH levels and T4, but ignore other important markers of imbalance. This misunderstanding leads to skewed lab results and the failure to diagnose accurately. Comprehensive thyroid testing includes measurements of the following hormones: TSH, T4, free T4, free T3, and reverse T3. Then there's thyroglobulin antibodies to detect Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroiditis, and thyroid peroxidase antibodies to detect Hashimoto's as well. And then thyroid-stimulating antibodies to identify Graves' disease, hyperthyroidism, and thyroid-binding globulin, leptin, and there's the basal metabolic rate. Now, without looking at all of these factors in thyroid function, this prescribed treatment may be unfit for the patient. For example, if a patient is advised to take synthetic hormones for hypothyroidism and is still experiencing fatigue, they may want to revisit testing, including their adrenal glands. In today's conventional model, there's no formal adrenal fatigue test, and this is where functional medicine becomes crucial for an accurate and comprehensive diagnosis. In short, functional medicine is a system-oriented approach that employs a personalized medicine approach to identify, understand, and treat the underlying cause of disease. Therefore, functional medicine practitioners like myself take the signs of adrenal fatigue very seriously, being that this disorder can both be a cause and a result from imbalances within the body. So some of the many signs practitioners will look for include fatigue, thyroid imbalances, unexplained weight changes, low blood pressure, unstable blood sugar, hair loss, blurred vision, and infertility. The most common diagnostic tool for adrenal testing is a cortisol saliva test that measures 4 cortisol samples at various times of the day, and DHEA, the mother hormone of the adrenals, and the cortisol to DHEA ratio. However, there are plenty of other ways to test for adrenal fatigue, such as postural blood pressure testing, or if a person gets dizzy upon standing, there's the iris contraction test. So to obtain an accurate diagnosis for the best treatment approach, it's important to have information from various tests, sometimes conducted multiple times, and to make tracking of all your symptoms a priority. So adrenal fatigue progresses through 4 different stages of advancement. Symptoms increase in frequency and severity throughout these stages. And the phases of adrenal fatigue go as follows. In stage 1, we call this the alarm reaction. Stage 2 is resistance response. Stage 3 is adrenal exhaustion, and stage 4 is adrenal failure. So up next, we'll be discussing each phase in detail. The first stage of adrenal fatigue is often called the alarm reaction or the fight or flight response and is characterized by high cortisol levels. This stage describes the body's immediate reaction to a stressor. The body initiates an anti-stress response to overpower the stressor and begin the production and release of cortisol. At this time, there is very little physical or physiological dysfunction noticeable. Fatigue is considered mild and may not sustain throughout the entire day. Sleep patterns are disturbed, and an uptake of caffeine, sugar, and carbohydrates is usually present. This stage is often categorized with the feeling of being wired but tired. In fact, most people enter this stage of adrenal fatigue many times in their lifetime. If you were to get lab testing during this stage, an elevation of adrenaline, norepinephrine, cortisol, DHEA, and insulin would be present. Stage 2 is the resistant response. It is where the adrenals begin to lose their ability to keep up with the body's demand for cortisol. During this stage, fatigue becomes more noticeable and extends beyond the morning, early afternoon, into the evening. The body will need more rest than usual to recover and will very rarely feel refreshed from sleeping. Infections, insomnia, anxiety, and irritability also become more common. This is where people begin to recognize their symptoms and seek medical attention. There are substantial drops in important hormones such as DHEA and testosterone in exchange for continual cortisol production. This phase can last a couple of months up to several years. As the adrenal glands are becoming less effective, the body's ever-increasing need for adrenal hormones remains unchanged, while the stress is still present. Stage 3 is where the body recognizes the decline in cortisol output and focuses on the conserving of its energy for survival. To do this, the body begins to slow down and break down existing muscle tissue for energy. So chronic fatigue is common, reduced exercise tolerance, longer recovery time, brain fog, insomnia, depression, increased infections, weight gain, lack of sex drive, less productive during the day, and increased need to rest. If not treated, the body further loses homeostasis. Luckily, it's uncommon for people to progress beyond this burnout to a fourth stage of adrenal fatigue. So at this point, much of the body's stress hormones, sex hormones, and neurotransmitters are very low, representing the crash after suffering from stress for a long period of time. As I mentioned, it's uncommon to enter this stage of adrenal failure, but it's possible, very dangerous, and important to recognize. Eventually, the adrenals become so completely exhausted. This severe advancement of adrenal fatigue can manifest very similarly to the clinical adrenal insufficiency disease like Addison's disease. And those symptoms would include sudden pain in the lower back and legs and abdomen, digestive distress such as vomiting and diarrhea, severe dehydration, low blood pressure, loss of consciousness, and high risk of cardiovascular collapse. Although these symptoms are much more obvious, there is still the chance of misdiagnosis. It's incredibly important to recognize the signs and see a trusted physician at this stage. Once adrenal fatigue enters this stage, the chance of it becoming fatal is very serious and a relevant concern. Fortunately, there are plenty of ways to reverse adrenal fatigue, and some of them include dietary changes. Stop the sugar and the high carbohydrates and eat a healthy Mediterranean diet. Adrenal supporting supplementation. Reduce adrenal stress. Minimize exercise and increase rest. A regular sleep schedule. Detoxification may be required. Adequate hydration and heal existing infections. And then the practice of meditation to help reduce stress. Now it's important to note a diet full of processed grains, vegetable oils, and sugars, much like the standard American diet, is known to stress the adrenals. So conversely, a nutrient-rich diet includes healthy fats and fiber, helps support adrenal health, and can aid in adrenal fatigue recovery. In particular, these foods are especially impactful in the fight against adrenal fatigue. So you want to include healthy fats such as coconut oil, coconut milk, avocados, olives and olive oil, nuts, seeds, fatty fish, and grass-fed meats. These are also important for stabilizing blood sugar, and I'll explain why this is such an important factor for recovery coming up next. You also want to include vegetables to provide a variety of nutrients to nourish the whole body, including the adrenals. Adrenal fatigue really zaps your nutrition, so it's important that you get a wide variety of different vegetables. And fermented foods for their probiotics. And protein is specifically important, and especially in the morning. It's recommended to consume approximately 40 grams of protein in the morning to provide support for the adrenals throughout the day. And you want to exclude things like caffeine, sugar and sweets, starchy carbohydrates, processed foods, particularly processed meats, and hydrogenated oils. The increased levels of cortisol that result from the early stages of adrenal fatigue also raise your blood sugar very quickly. This upsets our body's balancing act, resulting in a dump of insulin. This insulin orders our cells to take in as much sugar as possible to regain safe blood glucose levels. Insulin also signals our body to store extra glucose for later use. However, if our diet continues to provide more sugar than our body needs, weight gain, inflammation, and health complications will occur. It's important to address blood sugar stability when healing adrenal fatigue due to its pivotal role in energy production. So like I mentioned above, vitamins are necessary for most of the body's natural processes, and minerals are essential for hormone production and utilization. A few of the most important vitamins and minerals to supplement for adrenal fatigue include sodium, so natural salt such as Himalayan pink salt is needed for adrenal recovery. Aldosterone is a hormone responsible for salt regulation and is reduced by adrenal fatigue. Vitamin C, not only is it a powerful antioxidant that works to protect the body against free radicals, but vitamin C is also an essential building block for adrenal gland recovery. And you need B vitamins, B5, B6, and B12, which are specifically involved in cell metabolism, energy production, and fatigue regulation. Vitamin D is especially important for adrenal fatigue as it increases the enzyme needed for the production of adrenal hormones. When the body is in a stress state, the body must choose between replenishing the lost vitamin D or producing cortisol. Cortisol is chosen for survival. So magnesium is extremely important because energy levels are maintained by magnesium, and deficiency results in fatigue, depression, and many other adrenal fatigue symptoms. Then probiotics, because they improve digestion, immunity, and aid in vitamin absorption and hormone production. So adrenal fatigue and sleep dysfunction are closely related. Here's how. The body's natural schedule of cortisol secretion, cortisol levels, naturally rise and fall throughout the day. Adrenaline and cortisol both increase alertness and affect sleep schedules in a number of ways. You may experience trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or both. The best recommendations, other than stress relief, for regulating a proper sleep routine include creating a sleep schedule for going to sleep and waking at specific times and stick to it. You want to rest when you feel tired as much as you can so your adrenals can recover. Aim to sleep between at least 8 and 10 hours a day, and avoid staying up too late or being stimulated close to bedtime. So you want to turn off your tablets and phones. No blue lights before bed, as this disrupts the sleep cycle. The obvious problem around adrenal fatigue is stress. So it's no surprise that stress relief is one of the most important factors for optimal recovery. And here's some recommendations to manage stress. You can use essential oils, specifically lavender, practicing mindful meditation, begin a yoga practice, or just breathing deeply can actually calm your body. Spend time with people you care about. Journal is also helpful. And listen to enjoyable music. Relax with a good book. Drink some calming teas. Or go outdoors and connect with nature. Or just get a massage. So I want to thank you for taking the time to experience this class. I love sharing this topic with people who are eager to transform their health, and this group was just fantastic. If you have any further questions, please post them below, and I'll be more than happy to address your concerns. Please remember that I'm always here to support you. Please share the most valuable piece of information you learned from this class. Also, if you feel like you need support on this journey, do not hesitate to ask for help. I hope that the lecture exceeded your expectations and that you feel well equipped with the knowledge, resources, and tools to finally combat your adrenal fatigue so you can feel your best. But for more information, please visit functionalnutritionistacademy.com. It's here that you'll get your free gift. It's a report on solving chronic illness today. All you have to do is subscribe to get instant access. And you can also take more courses on this subject. I encourage you to check out Lesson 5 and 6 at the website above, Functional Nutritionist Academy. And you can also learn how to become a certified functional nutritionist online in your own time. I urge you to join and get the knowledge, the tools, and the training to begin transforming lives. Now, to book an appointment with myself, Dr. Teresa Rispoli, please visit CompleteHealthInstitute.com. Thanks again.